3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. It was Sauron's greatest work of craftsmanship, the device at the center of perhaps his greatest deception. This small item would help Sauron to throw the Second Age into turmoil. This ring would hold the fate of the Third Age, and all of Middle-earth. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the One Ring of Power. As we've seen in my previous videos in this series, the 3, the 7, and the 9 Rings of Power are forged in Eregion by the Gwaith y Myrdain, the great elven smiths led by Celebrimbor. Around 1600 of the Second Age, Sauron has made his way back to Mordor. Traveling to the volcanic Mount Doom, the Dark Lord forges his master ring in the fires of the mountain. Sauron places his own will and power into his ring. As Sauron first wields his ring, Celebrimbor and the elven ring-bearers in Eregion were instantly aware of Sauron's treachery, and Sauron knew where they were. The elves quickly remove their rings. The 3, which had been made without Sauron's help, are sent to Gil-galad and Galadriel for safekeeping, while the remaining rings are kept in a vault in the city. Sauron builds up his armies and makes war upon the elves of Eriador in 1693. He destroys Eregion, kills Celebrimbor, and claims the 16 Rings of Power. Though he would eventually be driven from Eriador, and the 3 would remain lost to him, Sauron distributes the 7 and the 9 among dwarves and men. The 7 help their dwarven bearers to amass great wealth, and the 9 men are given long lives and become great rulers, warriors, and sorcerers. During the Dark Years, when Sauron had conquered or devastated much of the lands of Middle-earth, he builds the great tower and fortress of Barad-dur, not far from Mount Doom. In addition, he constructs the Black Gate, in an effort to prevent invasion into his lands. Sauron also builds up his armies of orcs, trolls, and men. In this, we see 2 great abilities of the One Ring, likely serving the Dark Lord in his efforts. We know that like all rings of power, the one enhances the natural powers of its bearer. It is also said that a person bearing the One Ring could more easily dominate and command others. This no doubt proved useful to Sauron, who was already a master at manipulation in building his armies of men. We also see that much like the 3 elven rings, the one gives the power to slow the decays of the world. Like Galadriel keeping Lorien fair beyond belief, Sauron would tie the very construction of Barad-dur itself to the One Ring. The One Ring also allows Sauron to control the 9 rings of the men, corrupting them, fading them into the unseen world, and transforming them into the Nazgul, slaves under the domination of his master ring. While no doubt it was his intention to also enslave the 7 dwarf lords, their natural resistance against the domination of others saved them from this fate. Instead, their massive treasuries would attract the attention of the dragons, which would still work in Sauron's favor. With Sauron at his greatest might to date, he proclaims himself Lord of the Earth and King of Men, offending the arrogant Numenorians, who themselves had been turning to darkness for centuries. In 3262 of the Second Age, their king, Ar-Pharazôn, lands a mighty fleet at Umbar and marches to confront the Dark Lord. Fearing the Numenorians, Sauron's forces flee, and the Dark Lord takes a new tactic, surrendering to Ar-Pharazôn so he may corrupt Numenor from within. During his time in Numenor, Sauron becomes the chief counselor of the king and leads the realm to its destruction. With Sauron's body being destroyed in the downfall, it brings up a rather large question. Did Sauron have the One Ring during his time in Numenor? Tolkien seems to clear that up himself in letter 211. He naturally had the One Ring, and so very soon dominated the minds and wills of most of the Numenorians. I do not think Ar-Pharazôn knew anything about the One Ring. The elves kept the matter of the rings very secret, as long as they could. In any case, Ar-Pharazôn was not in communication with them. Many who would assume Sauron did not have the ring point to Sauron's body being destroyed, as a reason he mustn't have had the ring with him. In the same letter, Tolkien addresses this as well. Though reduced to a spirit of hatred born on a dark wind, I do not think one need boggle at this spirit carrying off the One Ring, upon which his power of dominating minds now largely depended. With his body destroyed, Sauron makes his way back to Mordor, where he would regain his form and his power. Over the coming centuries, Sauron would attack the new realm of Gondor, founded by the surviving Númenóreans, for whom he held a deep hatred. When Isildur is driven from Minas Ithil, he flees to his father's kingdom of Arnor. There, Elendil and Gil-galad form the last alliance in order to take the fight to Sauron. These massive forces meet upon the field of battle, and after a 7-year siege of Barad-dur, Sauron himself comes forth, driving the alliance back in 3441. There, upon the slopes of Mount Doom, Gil-galad and Elendil fight Sauron face to face. Both are killed by the Dark Lord, though Sauron himself would also be thrown down. Isildur approaches the fallen body of Sauron and cuts the One Ring from his finger, separating the Dark Lord from his greatest weapon. Sauron's spirit flees and would go into hiding for 1,000 years. Isildur takes the One Ring in recompense for his fallen father and brother, declaring it an heirloom of his house, going against the advice of Elrond and Círdan, that it should be destroyed in Orodruin. Gandalf would later read Isildur's account of claiming the One Ring. It was hot when I first took it, hot as a gleed, and my hand was scorched, so that I doubt if ever again I shall be free of the pain of it. Yet even as I write it is cooled, and it seemeth to shrink, though it loseth neither its beauty nor its shape. Already the writing upon it, which at first was as clear as red flame, fadeth, and is now only barely to be read. It is fashioned in an elven script of Eregion, for they have no letters in Mordor for such subtle work. But the language is unknown to me. I deem it to be a tongue of the Black Land, since it is foul and uncouth. What evil it saith I do not know, but I trace here a copy of it, lest it fade beyond recall. The ring misseth, maybe, the heat of Sauron's hand, which was black and yet burned like fire, and so Gil-galad was destroyed. And maybe were the gold made hot again, the writing would be refreshed. With Sauron defeated, his dark tower of Barad-dur would be leveled. However, having been created with the power of the One Ring, its foundations could not be destroyed so long as the ring remained. As Gondorians proceed to man the Black Gate in an attempt to guard against Sauron's return to Mordor, Isildur returns to Gondor to instruct his nephew on the ruling of the Southern Kingdom. In the second year of the Third Age, Isildur makes his way north toward Rivendell to reunite with his wife and youngest child, and to take his place as King of Arnor. As is his custom, he bears the One Ring around his neck, for it is implied that it has become physically painful for Isildur to wear the ring. The ring itself draws orcs to Isildur's location, mysteriously drawing the servants of the enemy toward itself. Isildur and his company are attacked in the disaster of the Gladden Fields. His men and his 3 eldest sons are killed in the ensuing battle, and Isildur, using the One Ring, is able to escape, jumping into the river in an attempt to swim to the other side. In the struggle across the mighty river, the One Ring intentionally slips off his finger, At first, Isildur feels an immense sense of loss, and may very well have drowned, as in his shock he stops struggling against the clinging weeds of the Anduin. But as quickly as it had come, the feeling passed. The pain had left him, and with an overwhelming feeling of a great burden being taken away, he pulls himself up out of the mud. However, his appearance alarms a group of orcs nearby, and they shoot him with arrows as they flee, and the ring's malice claims the life of its second bearer. While Saruman would later claim that during this time, the ring is washed out to sea, for over 2,000 years, the One Ring lies in the riverbed of the mighty Anduin. In 2463, two Stoor hobbits are at the river, one nosing about the banks while the other is fishing. Deagle, the one fishing in his boat, is pulled in by a great fish, where he finds a shining object in the riverbed. There in his hand lay a beautiful golden ring, and it shone and glittered in the sun, so that his heart was glad. But Smeagol had been watching him from behind a tree, and as Deagle gloated over the ring, Smeagol came softly up behind. And he caught Deagle by the throat and strangled him, because the gold looked so bright and beautiful. Then he put the ring on his finger. No one ever found out what had become of Deagle. He was murdered far from home, and his body was cunningly hidden. But Smeagol returned alone, and he found that none of his family could see him when he was wearing the ring. However, he would soon be driven out by his family, and the ring drives him to settle deep in the misty mountains, not far from both a colony of orcs and also staying in the same part of the world as Sauron's re-emergence in Dol Guldur. And here we see the effects of the One Ring over centuries of possession, and our first clue of the natural resilience of hobbits. Unlike the men who would gradually be pulled into the Wraith world, Gollum would not suffer this same fate, despite possessing the ring for nearly 500 years. It would, however, change him greatly physically, as he endures far beyond the natural lifespan of any halfling. As Sauron grows stronger in Dol Guldur, his dark thoughts turn to the ring, and as if in answer to its master, the One Ring slips from Gollum's finger as he returns to his cave after hunting a goblin in 2941. The ring wishes to be discovered by a new bearer, likely intending to be captured by one of the nearby goblins, and more easily finding its way back to its master. Instead, it is picked up by Bilbo Baggins, who would use its power of invisibility many times throughout the rest of his quest with Thorin's company. Even with the ring in his possession for a relatively short time, Bilbo's first instinct is to keep it secret from both Gandalf and the dwarves. Though they would all soon be told of Bilbo's ring, Gandalf would assume it to be one of the lesser rings created before the Rings of Power, which Gandalf calls mere essays in the craft. These lesser rings, unlike the 19 Rings of Power, were unadorned with any jewels, just plain and golden, explaining why Gandalf would not immediately jump to the conclusion that Bilbo's was the one. It is in 3001 of the Third Age, as Bilbo is celebrating his 111th birthday, that his relationship with the ring would reach its most critical juncture. He has seemingly not aged in the past 60 years, and is as obsessed with the ring as ever. His mind is often preoccupied with it, not wanting to keep it anywhere than on his person, frequently feeling a desire to use it, and at times feeling like an eye was watching him. Despite his hesitancy, Gandalf convinces his friend to leave the ring behind, and for the first time, the One Ring is willingly given up by its bearer. This was a crucial point. Whereas Bilbo is mostly able to go on with his life in Rivendell, Gollum had spent the previous years hunting for his precious, and the hobbit who took it. Gandalf, having grown suspicious of Bilbo's behavior toward the ring, travels to Minas Tirith, where he finds the scroll of Isildur and learns the details of the One Ring. Returning to Hobbiton 17 years after the long-expected party, Gandalf throws Frodo's ring into the fire, much to the chagrin of its owner. The heat reveals lines of fire in a flowing script, and while Gandalf would not speak its words at that time, we later learn that it reads,
Ajnaj Durbatuluk, Ajnaj Gimpatul, Ajnaj Trakatuluk, Agburzumishi Kripatul.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Not only was this confirmed to be the One Ring, but by this time Barad-dur had been rebuilt in Mordor, and Sauron had already begun his war for the ring. Gandalf tells Frodo to make for Rivendell, where the wise could decide how best to proceed. It is also in this moment that we see Gandalf's fear of and great restraint regarding the One Ring. He knows that should he agree to take it himself, it would corrupt him entirely. As explained in my What If Gandalf Took the Ring video, and laid out in Tolkien's own letters, Gandalf is one of the few powerful enough to truly become master of Sauron's ring, and overthrow him with it. Fortunately, he leaves the task with Frodo, who over the coming weeks would succeed in getting it to Rivendell. On their journey, another being would briefly wear the One Ring. As the hobbits make their way through the old forest and come to the house of Tom Bombadil, Frodo lets him see the ring. The ring has no effect on the mysterious Bombadil. When he places it on his finger, he does not disappear, and Tom is not tempted by the power of the One in any way. Though Gandalf had warned him not to, Frodo would wear the ring multiple times on his journey. The most notable of the early occasions comes at Weathertop, where he is tempted by the ring so that he could evade the ring wraiths. However, we see here that what most perceive as invisibility, in fact, is the ring's ability to make that person appear in the unseen world. Since the wraiths themselves exist primarily in the unseen world, this has the opposite effect, and Frodo is even easier to see. As for the previously mentioned real-world invisibility, it should be noted that when men, as well as hobbits, wear the One Ring, they are not 100% indiscernible. One could see their faint and shaky shadow, but only in the full light of the sun. While not technically complete invisibility, it certainly was nearly complete. Frodo would of course come to Rivendell, where the Council of Elrond would debate what to do with Isildur's bane. After Boromir suggests giving the ring to Gondor, other ideas include giving it to Tom Bombadil or sending it across the sea to the Valar. However, in the end, it is determined that the ring cannot be used, hidden, or otherwise disposed of in any way. Their only feasible choice, though a long shot, is to take the One Ring to Mount Doom so that it may be truly destroyed. When it came to the decision of who would bear the burden, Bilbo offers to finish the job he had started. However, Gandalf tells him that not only are Bilbo's adventuring days done, but that he could not possibly take back the ring after having possessed it for so long. In the end, Frodo volunteers, and the Fellowship departs Rivendell on December 25th, 3018. The ring goes south, and after a failed attempt to pass Caradhras, the Fellowship passes through Moria, where Gandalf falls with the Balrog to the depths of the mountain. Led by Aragorn, they travel onward to Lorien, where Frodo would offer the One Ring to Galadriel. While tempted, she, like Gandalf, would pass on this offer, knowing that she would become both great and terrible. The following day, the ring departs Lorien as the Fellowship makes their way down the Anduin River. After traveling for 9 days, they pass the Argonath and camp at Parth Galen. The Fellowship would break the following day, and Frodo puts on the One Ring after Boromir attempts to take it by force. Retreating to Amon Hen, the Hill of Sight, and still wearing the ring, Frodo sees signs of war wherever he looks. Finally, his gaze comes to the dark tower of Barad-dur, where he feels the presence of the Eye. Not a giant flaming eyeball, but the unceasing vigilance of Sauron himself. And suddenly he felt the Eye. There was an eye in the dark tower that did not sleep. He knew that it had become aware of his gaze. A fierce, eager will was there. It leaped towards him, almost like a finger he felt it, searching for him. Very soon it would nail him down, know just exactly where he was. Amon Law it touched. It gazed upon Tolbrandir. He threw himself from the seat, crouching, covering his head with his gray hood. Frodo would hear a second, mysterious voice, striving against the Dark Lord and telling Frodo to take off the ring, which he does. Little does Frodo realize, but this voice is none other than a resurrected Gandalf, who lies upon Celebdil. As we know, Frodo would bear the ring over the coming weeks through the Emyn Muil, where they meet Gollum and he swears himself to their service. In Gollum, Frodo sees what could become of himself and feels a bond with the wretched creature. The trio goes to the Black Gate before heading south through Ithilien. There they meet Boromir's brother, Faramir. After discovering the true purpose for the hobbits being in Gondorian territory, Faramir does what few have done before him. There at the Forbidden Pool, he rejects the temptation of the One Ring. He sends the three on their way as they make for the pass of Cirith Ungol, crossing into Mordor near the Witch King's city of Minas Morgul. As they climb to reach the pass, they witness the forces of Mordor marching to war. The rider halted suddenly, right before the entrance of the bridge, and behind him all the host stood still. Maybe it was the ring that called to the Wraith Lord, and for a moment he was troubled, sensing some other power within his valley. Frodo felt the command that he should put on the ring, but great as the pressure was, he knew the ring would only betray him. He sighed and bent his head. At that moment, the Wraith King turned and spurred his horse and rode across the bridge, and all his dark host followed him. While obviously not knowing it was the One Ring itself, the Witch King ignores this mysterious power in his land and carries on with the task at hand, his master's siege upon Minas Tirith. Frodo and Sam are betrayed by Gollum, who has once again fallen to the temptation of his precious. After Frodo is bitten by Shelob and assumed dead, Samwise becomes the last new ring-bearer of the One. He carries it for roughly 2 days as he works to free Frodo from the Tower of Cirith Ungol. As all who come across it, the One Ring tempts the humble gardener. As he stood there, even though the ring was not on him, but hanging by its chain about his neck, he felt himself enlarged, as if he were robed in a huge distorted shadow of himself, and vast, an ominous threat halted upon the walls of Mordor. Wild fantasies arose in his mind, and he saw Samwise the Strong, hero of the age, striding with a flaming sword across the darkened land, and armies flocking to his call as he marched to the overthrow of Barad-dur. He had only to put on the ring and claim it for his own, and all this could be. Sam shakes off this temptation and resolves to save Frodo from the orcs, which he does, giving the ring back to Frodo. After their escape from Cirith Ungol, they make their way across the plains of Gorgoroth, finally arriving at Mount Doom. It is there upon the slopes that Frodo reaches a point where he can go no further of his own strength, and the ring has too strong a hold upon him to allow Sam to carry it for him. Thus, Samwise the Brave carries his master up the mountain. There they are attacked by Gollum, who is repelled by Frodo and shown mercy by Sam. Here we see an example of the apparent ability of the ring to grow stronger within the lands of its forging. For when Frodo and Sam are attacked by Gollum, Frodo grabs the ring, without even placing it on his finger, and appears as a figure robed in white, holding a wheel of fire. Similarly, as Sam was searching for Frodo in Cirith Ungol, he appeared to the orc as a powerful warrior cloaked in shadow, holding some nameless menace of power and doom. These are dramatic and powerful depictions of our humble hobbit heroes. It makes you realize how incredible it would have been to witness Sauron himself wielding the One Ring in his own lands. Finally, on the brink of the chasm at the very crack of Mount Doom, Frodo comes to the end. "I have come," he said, "but I do not choose now to do what I came to do. I will not do this deed. The ring is mine." And suddenly, as he set it on his finger, he vanished from Sam's sight. And far away, as Frodo put on the ring and claimed it for his own, even in the Samath Naur, the very heart of his realm, the power in Barad-dur was shaken. The Dark Lord was suddenly aware of him. Sauron sends his ring wraiths in a last-ditch effort to reclaim the One Ring. But Gollum had leaped upon Frodo, biting off his finger and finally being reunited with his precious. In his celebration, Gollum slips and falls into the fires below. The One Ring, the source of so much death and suffering over 2 ages of the world, is destroyed. Barad-dur, whose foundations were built with the power of the One, collapses. As for Sauron, he is finally defeated. While not entirely destroyed, he is permanently disembodied, unable to ever again take physical form or influence the people and events of the world. From Sauron, the peoples of Middle-earth are finally free. The One Ring is at the center of a great many things in both the Second and Third Ages. Tell me in the comments below what your favorite One Ring moment is, and what role you believe it will play in the upcoming Amazon series. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss more great Middle-earth videos here on Nerd of the Rings. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Listen Me the Cinda, Mandu Pandu, Andrew Carlisle, Sky Carcass, Slidebelts, Dane Ragnarsson, Salim Rahman, Zetrock, Berto Berg, Grand Strategy Nerd, Graham Darricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description and purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.